Hi friends, Host Eric here with Opaloid, and I've got a notion that I've been discussing with some people the last couple of days that I'd like to discuss with Opaloid and the viewers as well, of course. Before I continue, let me just mention I do have a professional typing service. You can reach that service at twfpcollectibles.com/services, and it's $60 an hour or $50 an hour discount if you contact me via Facebook. So anyway, proceeding forward, the idea is this. Existential versus experiential scorecards. So, as I've discussed in previous videos, a dominant function represents an implicit value that says something must be meaningful in that metric in order to be worthy of your attention at all. The second function represents an instrumental value, that things must conform with that, but only for the purposes of attaining outcomes on some scorecard. And the third function represents what I've called before the absolute value. But I think what I want to start calling it is the experiential scorecard. And then the fifth function is essentially the existential scorecard. Which, what I mean by this is, take for example an ISFJ. We'll start there. Kimberly's an ISFJ who has introverted sensing as her dominant function. And what she really wants to do, ultimately, is attain the self, introverted sensing, via action, extroverted sensing, or realize the self via action. But the thing is, that's her ignoring function. So she's never really aware on some level that that's what she's ultimately measuring herself against. Whereas she knows she's seeking extroverted intuition. She knows she's seeking possibilities, but what she's less aware of is the fact that those possibilities exist for her only so that she can collapse her SI animal self, realize it in the physical world. It's her most natural state of being. So in that sense, if she is to believe she's living life well, then she's always working towards doing stuff, realizing things, impacting. Okay. For me, with NI in the fifth, I'm always working towards truth, finding singularity, even though I never quite feel like I've gotten there because there's always more possibilities, right? So the bridge then is I've got my existential scorecard of truth, which is sort of my overarching purpose in life as a character. And then I've got my experiential scorecard of FE, which is how I actually value it in real time or in the moment, or what makes me feel good, or shit that impacts me on a subjective level. Thoughts, Opaloid?
My thoughts are that it's an interesting framework, the experiential versus existential. It sort of resonates to a certain extent. I can see where you're coming from. I think I understand how you framed it. That's the first thing that comes to mind. The second thing is actually to do with the fourth function and the way that you described it. So, for example, when you talk about Kimberly with the lead SI, then seeking the NE, but actually seeking the NE in order to actualize through SE. I don't know if you use the word actualize, but
realize or impact.
Yeah, impact. I was thinking that the fourth, in some regards, sounds like a gateway to the fifth. That's the sort of like image that was sort of like coming to me of an hourglass. So literally like the top there, and then like that, and the first function, the dominant lead, being like at the top of the hourglass, and then it channeling down into the fourth, and then it flaring out through the fifth. Into like the eighth at the bottom,
and in coordination with that, it's that okay for an extroverted intuition dominant person, then there's NI truths that they're aware of in some sense but ignoring. Now, in order to build newness off of that, they have to draw from the particular. So NE draws from the subjective particular experience of the any user, and then it uses that to build new shit, right? But it's building it off of the NI thing, and it's building it for the purpose of attaining new NI things. So in that sense, it's the, like you said, the bridge or the gateway. It's how I get from NI to NI. You might also say it's the horse. SI is the horse between that gets me to travel to see these NI things. But it's like the horse that never stops moving. I get to pass by NI things. Or like NI things I'll be riding and shit will kind of gather around and then it'll like blow up like a horse poop and I'll see it behind me and go, there was an NI thing. And then the horse just keeps running forward.
Yeah, it's good to know that NI is seen as horse poop. So I'm imagining that every time I open my mouth, the horse is having a dump in your face.
But a very beautiful and fragrant horse poop that I value a lot.
That's great, thanks. I'll take that to my grave. So going on the assumption that I'm an INFJ, the equivalency would be. So I'm leading with NI as the fourth, and then NI in the first, and SE in the fourth. So the SE is gatekeepering into any and any possibilities. And I'm thinking, what's the equivalent image if NI for you is horse poop, which is happening around you, but you're ignoring or blind to? What's any for me?
Well, let's see. So you're seeking doing in order that you can make your NI out there so that I can build out.
I've got it.
Right?
No, I've got it. So if NI is like solid, chunky horse poop, NE is surely scattered diarrhea.
Well, see,
that's coming from a pack of free-floating wolves.
Right. So okay, you've got loose, wispy pieces of poop that are all around you, right? And so what you're doing is you're gathering. You sort of go wah, and it gathers it into a hard poop and drops it, and then so when you get too much of it too close to you, so if there's too much NE thrown at you from too many different directions, you go you get poop all over you and start to when you run away.
You know what it is?
What?
NE for an INFJ is a Jackson Pollock painting made from feces.
It's a Jackson Pollock. I would say it's more like a child's painting or a sort of a random scribbly thing. Because Jackson Pollock's not really random scribbly. He's all these lines all over the place. NE is such that there's a lot of scribbles that look sort of like things. It suggests things. So
yeah, but that's why it fits with Jackson Pollock, because there is some sort of like underlying related weaving thread, which an NE user sees, which an NI user might be blind to.
Okay,
I don't think they are blind to. But...
True, but what I'm suggesting is that if you look at a cloud, it looks like a turtle from this direction, or maybe it looks like a this from this direction, it looks like this from this direction. And if you look at a Jackson Pollock painting, it doesn't suggest, it's intentionally non-suggestive of things.
But okay, what's coming to me is you have a Jackson Pollock painting, and imagine if you could sort of like imagine the different layers. So strip away some layers to just see one outline, and that's one shape. Then you have another outline, which is another color pattern, which is another shape, and so on and so forth.
I mean,
anyway,
if you're good at NI, probably you would take something that is not suggestive and still find suggestiveness within it, because that's what NI does. It says, here's a bunch of random shit. It suggests the following, and boom, here's the whole meaning to be taken from it. And so that means being good at fencing off factors of consideration. You can't factor in everything in the world. So functionally what that means is it's a level of focus. Like, well, if I zoom in, it looks kind of like this. If I zoom out, it looks kind of like that. Whereas I tend to look at the NI stuff. I tend to look at the possibility stuff more from an overarching view, I think, in the sense that I go like, okay, well, here's a whole thing. Now here's how, like, well, here's the first associations that pop to mind, and then from the associations or from extroverted sensing too. Like I draw from the external environment around me thing, and I take that as a little nub of an idea, and blah blah blah. So it's like I look at the starting point from higher up, and then I look at the work from down at the ground.
Yeah, as I was listening to you, my mind, for some reason, I was thinking about herds of animals and lassoing herds of animals. This is I'm going off on tangent slightly, but I wasn't thinking of NESI, but more so NINE in a weird way, so that the NE is like, like the packs of animals, and there might be like different numbers of them and everything like that. But with the ignoring aspect, it's as though a lasso is placed over a set portion. So with the Jackson Pollock painting, it's set over the lasso is cast over a certain pattern within it.
The lasso. I was like, what the hell is that word he is saying?
Lasso. Lasso?
Lasso.
Lasso.
Lasso. It's not
lasso. As in Lassie the dog.
No, if you want to lasso something, it's not lasso either. It's lasso.
No, you lasso.
No, you don't lasso. And nobody in the world has ever said the word lasso before. I'm quite certain of it.
I'm trying to go into SI here. Yeah, you lasso.
No, you do not lasso things. Although I'm going to from now on, for sure. Whenever I lasso something from now on, I'm going to lasso it.
You don't lasso. You lasso something, do you?
Yeah, you lasso. Right. Like, I lasso the horse or the bull or whatever.
Because lasso, in my mind, has gone into Tao Te Ching and the guy who authored it.
Well, that's Lao Tzu. I gotta Google it now. This video is for sure, it has to include this important fact. Lasso. Okay.
Sorry, my sister was saying something in the background. That's what my hand gesture was like. Just
Lasso.
Give me a second.
Listen, here. I'll send you the link. That's the only way. Oh, I can put the speakers on.
Hi, yeah, sorry about that. What were you saying?
Lasso. Lasso. Lasso.
Yeah, Tao Te Ching, lasso. Oneness.
Yeah,
what's the problem?
It's lasso. It's not lasso. All right, but okay, I want to get back on topic briefly. So my basic idea also includes the following thing here: that third slot equals SI self, fifth slot equals NI self. Everybody's got their sense of themselves as a character in a book, and the sense of themselves as a product of their experience, right? So what I'm saying is that your hidden agenda is really the scorecard for your experiential self, the unique particularist self. And this explains why if you are an ENFJ or ENTJ with third slot SE, then you don't have an SI scorecard that works, because the one SI scorecard that won't work is SE. SI is the self constructed from SE stuff. So if it's like, you can't construct SE from SE, you can construct any other function from SE, but not SI. You can't make a metaphysical self that scorecards on totally non-metaphysical action.
All right. A couple of things I want to put out there. I wasn't really listening to the last few minutes. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I'm sure it was fascinating, but I'll just put it down to any scattering.
Yeah, like, it was muddling around, grabbing for shit.
Yeah. Okay, but I wanted to clarify something. Like, if if the third, the hidden agenda, so the third function is the hidden agenda or the absolute value using your framework, and now we're describing it as the experiential scorecard, yeah? And you're saying that the fifth is the existential scorecard. I wonder, though, a couple of things. One is, do you think you're distorting it because as an ENTP you're a metaphysician? That's one thing. And I'm wondering if the fifth is actually a metaphysical scorecard, not a existential scorecard for everybody. Have you got any response to that?
I think you're right about the second point there.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, what occurred to me as you were talking was that the fifth function represents what you think everybody's ultimate purpose should be, including your own, whether you say it explicitly or not. So it's like it's your teleological frame for human existence. It's like, at the end of the day, if you are not aligned with the truth, from my perspective, then we're gonna have a problem. And that's because that ultimately, to me, if there's a purpose if humans are purposed, it's towards truth. Then by this metric, then your existential frame would say, or metaphysical, whatever you want to call it, would say that humans are purposed to create. Kim's would say humans are purposed to do. INFP would say humans are purposed to love each other.
Yeah. So I'm listening, and I think at this point, let's just clarify for the viewer. So the first function is the lead. Yeah, that's what you do. That's your ticket to admission. It's what you implicitly do all the time. Your second function is the instrumental value. Your third function is your absolute value or hidden agenda, which we're now describing as your experiential scorecard. So the thing that you sort of like, you give yourself a pat on the back if you actually do it and you're aware of it and it's happening. The fourth function is what you're seeking. And the fifth function, we originally started off calling it the existential scorecard, the thing that you are actually secretly actually geared towards in a weird way. But I corrected it and said I actually think it's a metaphysical scorecard, because I would say it's more in the spiritual realm to a certain extent. What's coming to me is that if you imagine the first and the fourth, what we equate with normal like relationships and what we're seeking from like romantic partnership, so intertype relations should say that's your dual. I'm wondering if there's a spiritual duality, which is actually your fifth. So if there's a sort of like materialistic, physical duality, i.e. the person that you should actually mate with, have a relationship, marriage, etc. I'm wondering if there's...
It makes perfect sense. It's consistent with my BFF type, right? That would be explaining why we're BFF types. It's what I've always called what Socionics called, I think, the mirage, or
yeah, the mirage, yeah.
Yeah, my name for that is BFF, your BFF Socionics relations, because but not the person you're supposed to mate with. It's your second best choice, maybe, or your third best choice if you're going to mate, in my opinion. So I think my second best choice would probably be ISTJ woman, and my third best choice would probably be INFJ woman. And the reason is because you just don't we just don't complement each other and others' weaknesses enough for a mate relationship, INFJ and ENTP. It's much better as a friendship.
Well, what's coming to me is that the key differentiator is it's a mate relationship. So if we imagine that the teleology of mating is actually to form children and to have a balanced relationship to actually foster those children. I'm not saying that's true for all people, but to a certain extent, you could imagine that having an ENTP with an ISFJ would actually provide the ideal conditions both for the marital relationship, but also the relationship of the children that are formed through that.
I would say that... Go ahead, finish. Sorry, my bad.
I was just going to say you could go more abstractly and say that the archetypes within the selves, like one self and the other self, when they're conjoining in a normal dual relationship, so that's the first with the fourth, and vice versa, you could imagine that the archetypes in and of themselves are like intrapsychic or childlike aspects of the self, which are actually being parented through the dual relationship. Whereas with the first with the fifth, you could actually, and the title that's given to it, Mirage, actually fits quite well with the notion of like a metaphysical or spiritual partnership of some sort. Mirage sort of like has that those connotations that come to it, come with it.
The connotation I don't like about though is it implies that it's fake.
Yeah, but I would, yeah, I get you, and I'm wondering actually whether Socionics have actually misnamed it. So it shouldn't be Mirage; it should actually be
BFF.
Well, I was going into sort of like spiritual bond, but yeah, maybe BFF. But where my mind is also going is what is the eighth in all of this? It seems as though sort of like if you imagine a square, you've got like the lead, which is the top left corner, then you have like the seeking, the fourth, which is the bottom left corner, then you have the fifth, which is the top right corner. But what would the bottom right corner actually represent with regards coupling? What do you think, Eric?
Well, I suspect that represents, I mean, my basic take on it is it's like what you want to get rid of from your BFF. And the reason your BFF is because they don't have very much of that. It's like you want, as an ENTP, I'd like to have help all NI users get rid of their SE so they can only keep the good part of it.
No, but I'm actually thinking, what is, like you as an ENTP, you're leading with NE, you've got SI as your fourth, there's NI as your fifth, SE is your eighth. So somebody who's leading with SE, like, what intertype relationship would they have with you?
Okay, well, ESTP is known as my lookalike type, and ESFP is considered a collegial type of sorts, although I don't have that relationship with them at all. But I would say that the thing about the SE is it's the part that it's the one person who's necessary on the team, but whom nobody likes.
That's quite interesting. So
it's like he doesn't get along with NI for me. It doesn't get along with, because my version of NI is all ideational. It's not. It doesn't. I don't use NI to determine when to act. It's not a time thing for me. If you think about NI, SE in its original sort of animal state, it's knowing when to throw the spear at the antelope. Well, I don't use it in that capacity. I use it to know qualitative differences between objective entities, like pieces of media, right? So as a consequence, because I use it in that capacity, I don't like the way that it has time shit associated with it. That's the part of NI that I'm not in love with, where people go, okay, but we do have to do it like according to this schedule, because that has an impact on how people receive it as well, sort of thing. I'd like the metaphysical entities, the say pieces of media, to be time insensitive or less sensitive to what's around them, less contextually sensitive. I like them to be interpreted more independent of what other shit's around them. So therefore, I don't have to worry about the time aspect of it. Just I can assume that the NI field of the world is static, and I can just do ideation like that. But when you throw in SE, that impacts the game board. It says, okay, the game board was like this, and you were doing all this intuition shit, saying, okay, assuming stuff's like this, And then while you're in the middle of doing all this stuff, SE comes around and kicks the board. And you go, I was in the middle of some ideating here about this.
Mm-hmm.
So that's I think the relationship with SE is. I also understand though that in order to actualize externally as an ENTP, which is something I think I do, that it requires execution as well. So I like some aspects of SE and not others. That didn't really answer any questions, but that was just musings. Go ahead.
No. What I'm wondering about though is, like several minutes ago before the NE ramble, do you see how I'm being passive aggressive towards the NE here? But anyway, there was a moment where you.
I think it was accurate. I think it was accurate. I think that it was an inadequately focused bunch of talking. So the critique is accurate. Go ahead.
No, but I think what that actually demonstrates is the NE ignoring, because it's as though sort of like I felt internally, and we're going off on a slight tangent here, but I felt internally that, hang on a minute, there's all this shit that's coming to me inside, in my brain, and it's as though the audio is a distraction, and it's like, God, we wish he could just stop talking for a minute so I could just get this fully in my head. And that's where the frustration comes from, and then sort of like the passive aggressiveness with it. But anyway, going back on topic, there was a sentence that you said when you were talking about collegiate relationships and stuff like that, and you said something along the lines of it's a team, but it's the person in the team that's not wanted but necessary. And I wanted to focus in on the necessary thing. What do you mean by that? What's the necessity aspect about?
Well, I guess the point is that this links back to the third, I guess, that the existential scorecard relies on the eighth function for it to get points. So that's what, in my opinion, means that it's necessary. I can ideate all I want. I can conform or think about NI truth all I want. I can associate all I want from SI, but I'll never actually get FE points unless I do shit. So I guess that's the thing, is that the third slot and the eighth slot link. I want to get third slot shit, but ideally I don't want to do anything to get it. But I have to.
Because, like, as I was listening to you, like, this image was coming into my head. Like, it's quite simple. Like, I don't know if you can see that or not.
Yeah, I can see it fine.
So it's basically saying ENTP wholeness, and it's got the first here with NE, going down to the SI as the fourth. Then you've got NI as the fifth up here, and then you've got SE as the eighth up here. And then the word quaternity came to me, and it's as though sort of like there is a necessity, because without that SE there, the whole is not complete. But what was interesting is I was thinking of the cross waves, the double-headed arrows of the formation of this like yin and yang symbol in a strange way, and I was like thinking that all is sort of like very, very necessary, even though these might be aspects of the self which are like relegated into the shadow, whatever it might be. And with that was coming into my head sort of like, if you have duality in your fourth, so like somebody is providing that, do you think they're actually providing it, or do you think that they're actually making the person aware of it in themselves to reach wholeness? Is it wholeness from another, or is it wholeness?
It's both. And I can tell you that my SI is vastly superior because basically I have an SI environment that works for me. So like because I know that when I go get into bed, Kimberly's going to be there, it makes me more willing to go to bed. So more wanting to go to bed. When I think about going to bed, I don't think of it as this. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to lie down. I'm going to be thinking. It's going to be. I don't like being in bed. It used to be I didn't like to go to bed because that's the hollow time. When there's nobody there but you, and you're just there in bed when you're thinking about shit, and there's no audience and there's no anything, and it's the hollow time when you realize, have I really attended to myself at all today? No, I've been externalizing all day long. But now I see it as threaded in. Like I've got my body care Kimberly thing. The Kimberly thing is static and it's steady. It's reliable. But she also will bring me food when I forget to make it. Like the practical, the overarching thing is my motivations has changed. My relationship with SI, I like it better. So I choose it without having to have any discipline. I don't want to have any self-discipline. I want to choose it because it feels so good, right? That has changed. So I'm much more attentive to it because of that reason. But additionally, she'll actually do the things for me sometimes, plenty, and remind me of shit. And, I noted in a video yesterday, when you reminded me to turn the speakers, my response was, thank you. I genuinely was like, oh, cool. Why? You were providing SI. You reminded me of some little thing I had to remember to do.
Yeah. What I'm wondering is, so that was like you with Kim, but do you think sort of like equally, sort of like me with you, if I'm an INFJ, I'm coming along providing NI. So going back to this diagram for a second, so that's you, this is what Kim is providing with the SI, this is what I may well be providing with the NI. But again, do you think it's that I'm actually providing it, or do you think it's simply that it's filling out your psyche and making you aware of that aspect of yourself more? And likewise, she's making you aware of that aspect of your psyche more. And likewise, if you were to come across an SE user, you're likewise filling out into that area, which is already existent within you.
Both again.
Yeah, both again. But I want to put something out there, which was like an image that was coming to me, like a small like video clip, which was. Have you ever seen that? I don't know what it's called, but children do it where they fold up pieces of paper and then they do this, and every time they open it up, it's like a different pattern, and they. Yeah, that's how ironic. You've got a piece of paper.
That's what I'm doing right now.
Wow, that's amazing. But I was like thinking of have you seen it where it's sort of like a flower shape where you do that, and then there's like writing.
I don't know how to make.
I don't know what.
Yeah, I know what that is though. It's you say say a number and they go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I know that.
Yeah, that thing. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it's called or whatever. But what I'm wondering is using this sort of like thingamajig. Yeah, and if you imagine that there's 8 cognitive processes and you stick them in as the different aspects of this folding flower thingamajig, do you think that like becoming a whole self is actually just about unfolding that flower into everything, or not? Because that's how I see integration.
I don't see it as, because I see it as much more nuanced than that. I think it's about finding ways to provide each of your strength things, what they call an ego block in Socionics, your 1-2s, finding ways to optimally integrate elements of other attentional manners in appropriate contexts and in appropriate degrees and in from appropriate angles only, such that you enable everything to work better. It's not like you need more SI, you need better SI. It's not like you need more SE, you need better SE. You need smarter SE. What that means is, for me, I don't need to balance it out. I need equal amounts of NESI. No, I'm not looking for a balance. I need somebody else to cover some of that shit. I need an environment that makes me naturally choose that a little more often, because when I do, I empower my NE to be more effective. If I'm if I push it too far, it starts to lose effectiveness. And then if I recharge it better, it's just managing my resources better. And the same thing with FI. It manages my resources better to be accepting and embrace and find and show my own feelings. It makes my FE contextually, everything FE does gets a little bit better. It's a systemic change. It says, I'm not going to make this one instance of FE better. I'm going to make every instance of FE a little bit better.
Yeah. I get you, and I'm getting another sort of like visual in my head to do with sort of like 3D Tetris, but using cognitive functions and the different sort of like polarities of like like imagine there's an F container with FE and FI as being the different polarities, and then you know, it's moving across that, and you know,
I like the idea a lot. I like that Tetris shapes though are situations, right? They're not so much functions. But the point is, a situation is supposed to go into a certain slot, and there's an ideal slot that it fits there. Like if I could ideally get this L right here, it'd be perfect. If I don't get the L right there, I haven't necessarily lost. I'm just gonna have to do a little bit more work to get the row to go away.
Yeah, and let me bring some. Oh, are you still there?
Yeah.
Say something.
Yeah, can you hear me?
You were lagging at my end. 1 second. Say something.
Okay,
I'm just going to reload for 1 second, but it's really important, so keep recording.
I'm keeping recording.
Hiya.
Hi.
Yeah, something came to me when you were talking about L shape and Tetris blocks and everything like that. I want to say that the stuff that I've got in my head is actually like 3D Tetris, so it's happening like in various different planes, if you can imagine that. The other thing is, just 1 second, I'm getting background noise. 1 sec.
Now I can't hear you.
Hiya, I'm back. What's that? What's your thing?
This is an L shape.
I'm going to come to that in a second. My sister, who was in the background, was making background noise, and she made me. One. Yeah. So, like, you know, with the different cusps. So we could imagine sort of like these are the cusps, which are the functions that we actually know of, are first through to fourth. But like hidden behind is like the fifth through to eighth. And if you unfold it all, you have like the completeness of the self. Yeah, I'd sort of like morph that into like 3D Tetris in my brain. But what I was going to say is, you know, with the L, I don't know if you picked up on this link or not, but for people who are watching, who are not that familiar with TwFP, it has a Facebook page. And on that, recently, Eric posted something about don't go holding L shapes because you might get shot down by the police or something like that. Do you remember that? Yeah. And I wondered whether there was any sort of like archetypal link with the L and authority.
Well, you know, it certainly is there in Tetris. The L shape is, you know, you're in for trouble when you get a bunch of L's coming down. Okay, because they just don't fit that well. They're cumbersome. They're bulky. The bottom part of the L, you can't slide it underneath something unless you're perfectly quick, and so you know it's a challenge. The post I put up about the L shapes and stuff is my reaction to something that I've been harping on for a long time, long before it became a public issue. I was harping on the cops and how much I didn't like their disregard for the law and stuff like that. So, you know, the crazy thing is, the way I wrote that is very similar to the way police apologists will typically write things, and people, because the tone is so convincingly similar, people aren't sure. I mean, if I'm joking or something. I got a comment like that. Like, I can't tell if this is trolling. The crazy thing is, that shows you how often people don't account for the actual meaning of the words and instead address things by tone. Because what I say in there is things like, you know, anything can look like an L-shaped object, even a hand, especially if the officer's view is partially or fully obscured. Okay, so we're talking about shooting a guy because he has a hand. A cop who can't see anything shoots a guy because he has a hand. No, just he has a hand.
Yeah,
I've got to point out that a piece of a hand might, if a view is partially or fully obstructed, look like a part of an L. And if anything that looks like part of an L might turn out to be an L-shaped object. And any L-shaped object might turn out to be a gun. And cops can't take any chances, so they should fire whenever such a situation occurs. Well, if that were the case, they were actually firing whenever such a situation occurred. I mean, whenever they couldn't see something, they'd start firing their guns. But people didn't interpret the meaning of the shit to mean what it means. They interpreted it to mean, like, well, to mean what its apparent tone is, which is a lot of respect for the tough reality of our brave officers who go out there and put their lives on the line. They hear all that shit tone-wise, and they don't think about what I'm actually saying enough to think, of course it's not serious. Of course I'm not seriously saying every time a cop encounters a person they can't see completely, there should be a hail of gunfire.
Yeah, and do you know where my mind is going linked to all of this sort of stuff? I'm not calling you this by any stretch of the imagination, but L is usually like the loser, isn't it? Like loser symbol. Yeah? So where my mind has gone is actually the L of loser tied to critical parent, tied to TE within an ENTP, within you. And TE representing authority, what's the word, like broad, sweeping, blanket logic, and not seeing the reality of the truth, TI, and the nuance of it all. So you've demonstrated it quite well in, you know, literally in the last couple of minutes, last 2-3 minutes, the dynamic.
Listen, Opaloid, two L's make a plus. Okay.
You know what when you originally showed me the L's, what I was thinking boomerang. They look like boomerangs, or a boomerang that's going to come back at you.
Right. But now it looks like it's time to do some adding. The thing is, I think that's the thing. It, to a certain extent, we are the loser types, ENTPs and INFJs and other metaphysical types. We're the losers because what often wins in many, many things in life is not being smart, it's not doing the right thing, it's not being correct, it's not being authentic, it's not being kind, it's doing shit. Doing shit has a unique power over all other kinds of being. Doing shit compels others to react. And it puts that doer in the driver's seat. So that's why it's constantly bullying the other manners of being in some sense. Of course, that's
and now,
my
what's the word? What you
slot interpretation? Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's exactly where I was going to go, because with that, I was going to say, well, we now know what the 8th is it for you as an ENTP. We all know now what the SE, the bullying, the physicality, and it coupled with the TE, which would be here in the 6th. So it's interesting how it all sort of like mingles together. But I wanted to say that the L I don't think is unique to you or I. I think sort of like we all have our hurts which emanate from our 6th, our like inner critic, our critical parent, which always drags us down. But I get what you're saying, and yeah, I could go into something, but I won't do that.
And I would
but one thing I
note that also, bridging off what you said there, that the reason TE is so countervalued is implicit in TE is the notion that we ought to measure shit that SE does.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's an important point, that it's not... I don't think it's TE in and of itself. It's TE with an ENTP linked to TE with the SE.
Yeah, well, because, look, the thing is, TE's subjective, so it's gonna link to some sort, but it's dealing with the actual world. It's external, so it's gonna link to the external world subjectively via actual impacts. So it's gonna always be like, well, but it only matters if we can measure the impacts. And I'm gonna say, but measuring impacts implies that we like impacts, and we don't like impacts. Impacts mess up things by ignoring restraining principles and prioritizing kicking the game board over playing the game.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, somebody was just knocking on the door. I missed the last 10, 15 seconds. Can you just repeat?
Yeah, I said that it prioritizes that, because if you're measuring shit in impacts, then you're saying, let's ideate for the purpose of doing. But to me, it's always kicking the game board. It's like, if we're doing, then we're not. Yeah, I don't even remember exactly what it said. Something like that.
Yeah, no, I want to just say that actually resonates with me, because I've noticed this dynamic in myself over the last few days, which I mentioned prior to recording, which was to do with creating my own YouTube channel, like there being lots of other YouTube channels which are out there, and where do I find sort of like my voice, my uniqueness, and everything like that. That was one thing that I was saying to Eric earlier. But the other thing that I noticed in myself was, when it had gone from that sort of like that intuitive aspect of sort of like trying to get a sense of the future, where things are leading, etc., and then it's being when that's being converted into the actual doing, but then sort of like a routinized doing. So that's SI in the 8th. I suddenly felt very, very, very deflated. It was like, oh, well, what's the point of this then? Like, I'm just going through the motions, repeating what's already been done, like, ad infinitum. And the level of deflation that came with that sense of like, oh God, even if it's an interesting idea or an interesting topic or an interesting channel that I may create, this notion of like going through this routinized motion of like, and again, and again, and again. And I completely relate to what you're describing, but yours is the other way around with the SE in your 8th. It's sort of like, well, why do I have to ideate for the impact it may give? Whereas I'm like, why do I have to come up with an idea or like vision or whatever it might be in order then to actually create it through repetition?
Why do I have to keep impacting in order to attain the vision? Is your question.
Yeah.
My question is, like, so if you're just like, why do I have to keep impacting in order to attain the vision, or why can't somebody else impact for me, really? So it's like, what this is, in a sense, is this is providing for you SE. It's like, normally to get to where you get the kind of views that you're getting right now, it takes a amount of follow through and execution of doing shit for a long period of time to get there. But so in that sense, I'm providing SE, which you're seeking. And the thing is, it's an SE that I'm comfortable with, because it's not following through. It's just it's not constraining. It doesn't interfere with my NE. It's an expression of it and or a realization of it in some regard when it's my SE. Now, if it's SE that in general I don't like it. If it's SE in argumentation, I don't like it. If it's SE I directed outside of me, I don't like it.
But what's actually coming to me as I'm listening to you is that it's not just the SE. That might be true, but what I'm actually relying upon is the SI that you've already done the groundwork for with your channel. So I'm coming along as this newbie who's like interacting with you on the videos, but I don't have to do the rinse and repeat aspect, which has already been done. and that's what is off-putting to me, because I can 1 second, somebody at the door, 1 sec. Yeah, so that rinse and repeat is just like just the idea of rinse and repeat. It pains me, the notion of having to do that, because I feel like I wonder if this is the same for you with your 18th.
It's because of what we started with. You're collapsing. You're saying the ultimate purpose of people's the teleological purpose of people is creation of newness, and I can't stand the idea of sitting there and doing the same thing over and over again so I can build up this shit.
Yeah, bingo. But I would also throw into the mix that it's also the notion that the repetition is going to take away the sense of impact. It's as though, no, I want to be able to throw in a big stone, yeah, and have like the big impact and do the work once for that big impact, not have to create, keep creating like little tiny pebbles here and there, which have tiny ripples, which hopefully eventually will build up into something. Mm-hmm. It's like that one and done, like, but here I am, as opposed to like, oh God, not again, and again. And it's that loss of, you're right, it's the loss of the any newness, which was being the fifth for me, which is taken away. But it's also, it's robbing me of the NI to a certain extent, because the NI is like, like bright, shiny, new, like vision, etc. And that in and of itself should win the day. And realizing that in and of itself doesn't win the day is frustrating.
I think what probably ought to win the day is your realization that you keep enjoying yourself doing this.
Yeah. That's interesting, because I think that's true. That's true. Is that what wins the day for you?
Yeah, for sure. It's like I gave up long ago trying to implement visions. Long ago. That requires self-discipline I just don't have. So what I do, what I've been lucky enough to have happen is I found something that I can do because I like it all the time, that has some purpose, productive, general overarching goals type stuff. Which is the YouTube channel. It doesn't have any specific goals, but it does have a sort of practical purpose that is, I hope to eventually make my living doing this stuff. So there is that I guess there's a specific goal. But I wouldn't want I don't want any plan to how to get there.
Yeah, whereas for me, I think I already have like a sense of something over there that I'm actually like working towards, and it's like I already have the foreknowledge, and I like that. I feel like in a strange way it's my I don't know if it's a safety net. I wouldn't say it's a safety net, but it's just a sense of I need that anchoring off there in the future, that I'm actually being the image that's coming to me is sort of like you imagine a fish that's being reeled in, and you like the fisherman is reeling you in, not you, but like a fish, it's reeling the fish in, but it's as though I'm the fish that's being reeled in by the fisherman, which is off there in the distance. And there's some comfort in the knowledge that, no matter how much I wiggle, there's an inevitability that I'm going to be reeled into that point.
Right. And I remember when I accepted that I didn't have to stress about quitting or not following through or whatever, because there was a stretch time where I did stress about that some, knowing my history and knowing how I'd start big things and then it kind of just started to get rolling, and then I'd be like, fuck it, I'm bored with it. But there's something unique about this platform, and that made it such that I just kept coming back to doing more of it because I was addicted to it. I needed to be addicted to it in order to do it, like anything else in life, pretty much, except for work, which I understand I have to go do and whatever. But what I would say is, it's to the extent that you understand it's destined to happen. You're not. unless you up and disappear, which I mean, from my perspective, it's destined to happen. It's destined to happen that you will end up doing a channel that you'll probably realize at some point that your concerns about repetition are not something you need to worry about, because then that's ignoring NE. You know you need it there to do your NI shit, but you don't trust it to necessarily be there when you need it.
And linked to that quite succinctly was about INFJs, and maybe it's true of INTJs, but I think it's probably true of all people, but specifically linked to the conversation that we're having with NE in my fifth. It's about trusting into the process and letting go into the process, because NE is about emergence, in the moment emergence, but taking you into the future. There's an emergent aspect of like playfulness and not knowing, but being happy with the not knowing. Whereas NI, even though N is about the future generally, NI is about having a sense of knowing and being okay with the sense of unknowing, but with the sense of anchoring in the knowing. I know that sounds very paradoxical and confusing, but there's more of a safety net element which is present there, I think, whereas the NE is just sort of like, oh, wherever it goes, it goes.
Well,
and
you'll know
that's
what
cool.
happened when you said that thing earlier about, oh, that's just NE rambling. What happened in that instance was you asked me a question about SE, how that fits into that square. And I had no NI about it. I had no NI conclusions about it. Nothing popped to mind as the answer to it. So so that's what NE does without NI. It just goes, well, it could be this, I don't know, maybe this, or here I'll talk about something that's kind of related and just kind of go off on a tangent, and we'll see what happens. Maybe I'm getting somewhere. I'll find myself rambling for a while. Does that answer your question? Because I'm not sure if it does sometimes. But if when NI is there and it's doing its thing properly, then we move through idea, through process of talking about it, through to conclusion. And NI it. That's when things are going right. That's how we kind of operate in our exchange. When I don't have any NI, and you're asking me to give you something that requires NI, you get, Eric's random musings.
No, but that's cool. Well, I was gonna say, am I in sync at your end where it's actually been recorded?
Yeah.
No, that's cool, because you're out of sync here, but it's okay if it's in sync at yours. What I was going to say is I think you've oversimplified there, because I think it's not about just gaining understanding through a mutuality of NI. I think what actually happens is that there's a continual movement along the axis of intuition between NI and NE. And I don't just mean with us, but also within us. And I see sort of like a playfulness and a dance of intrapsychic processes, so within myself and within you, and interpsychic between us. And it's as though sort of like the movement of fluid, like both within ourselves, along the intuition within ourselves and the intuition within yourself, and then the flow of liquid between us. It's as though we're waiting for that to all sort of like sync up. But I don't think that's specifically just NI which is syncing up. I imagine it's the right configurations of NE and NI that are being shared and then inside of us as well. I know this might sound like I'm over abstracting, but that's how I see it. I
get what you're saying in general, that you and I are both using both forms of intuition when we're communicating with each other frequently. I rely on NI things that you present to build off of, and also to choose what to say in general. Like if something I can tell whether something's insightful or not, and that's basically NI. So I use it all the time, but the thing is, it's a hidden instrument. It's not in the process. It's a hidden instrument. In its valuings, it's a sort of explicit goal, but so in the moment, it's like I'm aware of how I can ideate out from shit consciously, and I'm doing it consciously. Whereas the NI stuff is serving that, and for you it's vice versa.
Yeah, and the single word that comes to mind as I'm listening to you is this. What do you think?
Awakening.
Can you read that?
Yeah, awakening.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I'm constantly waking up more and more and more in general. I don't. The term about awakening, though, one problem I have with it is it implies a self-development binary status. Prior to understanding this, you were sleeping, but now,
well, I disagree.
You shall awaken.
Yeah, well, I disagree with that. I think that's your TI, which is your good parent, which is kicking in and trying to binarify something or binary-esque something, which is not a binary. I think awakening is just simply a process which is always in process of happening as you expand out. And I think your TI is like, no, bad NI, go away NI.
By the time I'm
and
dead, I'll
it's
be
doing
fully
that
awake.
by. Nah.
Is that what you're saying?
No,
Is
no,
that
not
what
at
you're
all.
saying? No?
No, I see what you're trying to do. I see the NETI trying to, what's the word, shuffle in and dance around what I'm trying to say. But you know you're just bullshitting yourself as much as me.
Sure, yeah. I agree with you in the sense that if you call sort of awakening as the removal of involuntary lack of awareness. So if you're asleep, it's sort of involuntary lack of awareness. If you're awake, then you have less involuntary lack of awareness. So there are, I think everybody comes out of childhood with lots of sleepiness and ends up shedding some of that involuntary lack of and or presence of awareness at certain things. Yeah.
Do you think
what's interesting is how I'm experiencing it
to your environment?
Let me turn on the speaker so Kim wants to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. No, that's fine.
I don't hear him, so I keep forgetting.
All right, go ahead, Kim.
I was gonna say, do you think that it's also like for me, there was an awakening that I experienced with meeting you, and because I was around, I was a product of my environment.
Okay.
So remove me from that environment, and then there's an awakening that happens, which is what happened with me and my situation.
So you're saying that you were blinded by my by the consistency of your environment's interactions with you, and to buying into the frames that were implicit in those interactions, and then my coming helped you, awakened you from that state of misperception.
Yes.
Thoughts, Opaloid?
My immediate thoughts are that what Kim is describing. Oh, it's echoing. No, it's cool. No, it's cool. What's coming to mind is that it seems that that's very specific to an SI DOM, and even though it links with the awakening theme, and like Eric coming along, providing the fourth, it's also providing an impactedness, which is the SE in the fifth. And it's a shifting away from the SI routinization and
internalization,
what's been built up.
Right, SI wants to internalize it, and so what you're saying is that this is, it's like we were talking before about how like ultimately my purpose, or my understanding of why people exist, what their teleological purpose is to pursue truth or something. That's my fifth function. Well, the equivalent would be, the reason you know yourself is so that you can impact the world in some sense, to do shit, right? So what he's saying there is it's consistent with that idea to say that my arrival made you awaken by doing shit that needed to be done for a long time. You needed to clear out that trash, and we did it.
But that I wasn't even aware was there.
which fits with what I was saying. It's that feeling, that expansion into what's already present, but it might not be known as being present, which is that.
That makes sense, right? Yeah. But then there's the other thing is, I think one way that Kimberly's perspective on things has changed that doesn't link directly to herself is you still, when you encounter other people, you interpret them somewhat differently, having learned about all cognitive function stuff.
Absolutely.
So even if it's not linking to her, if it's somebody else, it's something that he encounters in the world. What do you think the phenomenon? Talk to me about how you process in meeting some new person now versus how you would have before.
Well, like I told you that from the very beginning, the first thing that came to my mind was that that forgiveness and awareness. But then on the flip side, there's also non-forgiving. I'm non-forgiving of certain types now because I realize that I feel like they prey on people like me and others, where they get their juice from making people feel like, it's like that sneaky evilish side to certain types that now I want to go after it. Now I'm mad. I'm a little disturbed about it because I know how easily they can trap people into their little box.
And you know what I'm hearing with that is a couple of things. The first off is that the knowledge is actually, again, it's another example of NE. So Eric is the embodiment of NE, but the knowledge in itself, the knowledge in itself is NE, and the NE is sort of like allowing a unshackling from the normal constraints of SI. But the other thing that's coming to me as I'm listening, and hopefully this isn't me, I'm not self-denigrating by any stretch, but what's coming is that what Kim is describing with regards to evil, it seems as though it's similar to what Eric was describing with regards the police force. So the TESE, it sounds like with Kim, it's the FI linked with NI. So this notion of being trapped by somebody. Sorry?
The NI box. She hates being
the NI box.
Boxed by NI.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it
exactly?
Is it my type that gets put in that box, or is it all types?
No, I just think different people respond or call it different things. For you, it's the NISI box and NIFI box, and it seems as though it's a box to do with your emotions. It's sort of like pinpointing you in and sort of like at the same time making you have to feel what is personal to you.
Yeah, and like Eric said, my family put me in this category of low-hanging fruit. And so what they do is they put me in this box, but they also let new people in and display this, well, this is why we put her in this box. In a evilish way. Well, let us get to know her for 3 months, and you'll see this box that she's in.
She doesn't want her SI particularism boxed as an example of some NI reality.
Well, what's coming to me is this. Just bear with me 1 second. It's a little image that that's coming to me. Is this? So the NI, it's what I'm noticing. I'm picking up quite a few times. So this is Kim ISFJ NI in the 8th. Her FI is in the 6th, and she's talking about this box and stuff like that. So what I'm hearing is that it's this notion of it being contrived or planned or sort of like you've been put into it, as in something into the future.
Yes.
Yeah. But the other thing is that I noticed is that you talked about other people joining in.
Yes.
And what came to my mind is NI perspectives, and with that was this image here of FI in the middle, which is you and your emotion, and then all these different arrows representing NI or perspectives, all sort of like poking at you and joining in.
Yeah.
Which is very NISI, if you think about it.
I mean, I would say the thing in the middle is really SI. Now, the point about it is SI as understood via an FE framing. So she's perceiving how others can perceive her, okay? And that's giving, and from there, that self-concept does link to FI. She'll feel bad or angry towards people who box her in that fashion, or in some other regard, she will link to FI. But I think the thing in the center is the SI constructed self. I'm constructing my story of myself, and I have to what I have to account for that's objective and I can't deny is other people's perceptions of me. I can tell that that person thinks I'm dumb. I can't deny that reality. I'm not. I as Kimberly, am not going to go, no, maybe she doesn't think I'm dumb. I'm going to realize that and try to incorporate that into my sense of self. So I don't like it when I feel like other people are poisoning the well against me, or other people are framing me for other people, because then they're buying into your NI frame. And what Kimberly and I used to sort of have disputes about almost is, I'd say, but Kimberly, you don't understand. That's I said, ignore NI. Whatever they say or whatever happens, I'll figure out how to respond to it. We'll win the argument chains. Blah, 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 blah. They're not going to walk away from this smelling like a rose. You are. You're going to persist in our current course, and we're going to win the narrative battle. We're going to make everybody else buy our NI packaging, not the other way around. And NI packaging is something I can just throw together anyway. We'll worry about how to NI it later. I have faith in my NE, you know? So I think that Kimberly is increasingly coming to trust me in the sense that she understands that I'm not just blowing smoke up her ass when I'm telling her we're going to win the perception battle.
But honey, I hate to even say it, that it's not even all about you. It's all about my learning the knowledge of all of this as well.
Not all about me?
No, because it's you can tell me all day long. And so far, yes, you've been right. But even though you've told me all along, it almost had to play out.
Sure, and it's interesting. You'll note I didn't make the claim that I've been right. I've been making the claim that don't worry about it because I'll win the fight. I'm not saying trust my NI. Note that I'm not saying trust my NI. I'm saying trust my NE, which is why we're duals. Because if I were making a bunch of NI arguments, it would play right into our insecurity function. Instead, I'm saying, don't worry, baby. NI ain't no match for my NE.
Yeah, but I think what she's actually saying is, hey, they're my shackles and it's my win to have.
Okay, well, that's INFJ perfection on your part there. Congratulations.
That's INFJ fuck you too, Eric. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, well,
I'm only kidding around.
No, I mean I think that's a perfect example of it played out perfectly, because here I was boasting about NE dominance, and you bust out the NI hammer on me. It's perfect. Of course, you'll see how I just sort of skate off of it, though. Ain't no thiggity thing. That don't stick on me. Snow doesn't ever stick to the ground in Eric's world.
Is that you burning NI to the ground?
No, I love NI. That's the thing. I don't have a problem with it when it occurs. It's not my insecurity function. It's not countervalued or whatever. I just ignore it and move on.
All right. What was that thing that you're holding in the tongs? Because I had an image of you holding NI in your tongs and burning it to death.
This is the bowl from the bong. It gets clogged with resin pretty quickly. So the great thing about this bong is this is really the only part that gets clogged. Let me tell you to the audience out there, if you're considering getting a bong, get one of these silicone bongs with this here. And the reason is, if you just keep this clean...
This is any dancing away.
If you just keep this clean...
For the viewer.
I'm not even dancing away. I've forgotten what I was dancing away from. I just...
Anyway.
Disaster.
Ooh, you're right.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm just dropping shit. That's all.
Normal Eric.
Yeah, before we finish off, I want to just put something out there which was there before, which I forgot to say, which was to do with was it Lassuing or Laozuing or whatever. I had an image of Lassie the dog, but an Oriental version, who was the all-knowing, sort of like not just rescuing people after they're like in danger, but rescuing people before they're in danger. Linked to the Tao Te Ching. So, any thoughts? And on that note, I think that's a perfect note to finish this video.
It didn't actually get recorded, but I said there. I had the mic off briefly when you were talking, and I forgot to turn it back on. Anyway, the point is.
Oh,
Yeah,
when did you stop?
Well, I've been trying to play mic jockey because when you're talking, I try to turn off the mic so I don't get echo on the recording since I got the speakers on. And then when cameraman is talking, I try to turn the mic back on. I've been good about doing it, except I missed it that last little bit. Anyway, Lao suing is a good idea. Forget that little quip. It's irrelevant. Lao suing in general is a good idea. If you're Lao suing somebody, it means various things like, you're telling them some random contradictory paradoxical sounding thing as though it were meaningful, and you should go it's trying to evoke an opaloid if you're Lao suing someone. If you go like your greatest strength is your weakness, then you're Lao suing someone. Okay, so thanks for watching. This is an hour and 16 minutes, the greatest hour and 16 minutes of your life, or less if you were watching it at faster speed. And if it wasn't, then, well, we'll try better next time.
Yeah, and I'll just do my blurb and say, hope it was of some value. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, give us your points of view, feedback, etc. Also visit Eric's store, TwFP Collectibles, and also he's running coaching, etc. 60 normally, 50 through Facebook, and probably 50 as well if you were to mention this video as where you heard first. Yeah, so keep watching. Bye for now.
And don't forget to eat plenty of cheese.